January 11th, 1943. Clinton Correctional Facility, Dannemora, New York. A prison warden climbed onto a mess hall bench and held up a letter. The letter belonged to Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson. He had written it for another man, a man who could not write his own. The warden read it out loud, every private word, every tender line meant for a wife in Buffalo. 200 inmates sat with their spoons in their hands. Nobody laughed at first, then the warden made them laugh. 200 men, one letter, one black fountain pen taken as a trophy. 11 years later, that pen came back. It came back in a small brown box with no return address. By then, the warden had lost his office, his title, and his name in every newspaper in the state. And Bumpy Johnson was on a train to Alcatraz. Both men fell in the same season. Only one of them had planned it. So what happened in that mess hall? What does a man do with 11 years of patience? Harlem tells it one way, the records tell it another. Let us go back and find where they meet. Before we continue, I'd like to ask you for one small favor. If you enjoy these stories about Bumpy Johnson, Harlem, and the people who shaped that era, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us keep these stories alive and bring you more of them. Now let's return to the story. The cold up there was a different animal. Dannemora sat close enough to Canada that men called it Siberia. In January, the wind came down off the mountain and slid under the doors. The pipes did not warm the cells. They only made noise. That was the first thing Bumpy Johnson noticed when he arrived. The radiators clanked like something trying to get out. He had been in prison before. He knew the sound of a bad room. This room was worse. He was 37 years old that winter. He had a wide chest and a soft voice, and hands that stayed still. Men watched his hands. Still hands mean a man is not afraid. In Harlem, he had been something close to royalty. Up here, he was a number and a coat. He did not fight it. He studied it. That was the part nobody expected. The others expected the Harlem name to walk in swinging. Instead, he read. He read in the yard with his back against the wall. He read at night until the lights went down. He read the same 11 books until the librarian started hiding new ones for him. And then he started writing. It began with a man called Pigeon. His name was Cornelius Nance. He was from a mill town in Alabama. He was 24 and he could not read a road sign. He got a letter from his wife every week and carried it in his shirt. He carried it unopened for 11 days once because he was ashamed to ask. Bumpy Johnson saw him touching the envelope in the yard. He did not offer. He never offered. He sat down beside him and started talking about the weather. Then he said one thing. You want to know what she says? Pigeon did not answer. Say yes or say nothing, Bumpy said. Pigeon said yes. That was the beginning of the letter trade. By the second winter, Bumpy Johnson was writing for 11 men. By the third, it was closer to 40. He charged nothing. That mattered more than the writing. Men brought him tobacco and he pushed it back across the table. Keep it, he said. Buy your mother a stamp. The guards knew. Most of them let it go. A letter home kept a man quiet. A quiet man was easier to count. But one man in that prison did not like it at all. His name was Harlan Vance Pryor. He was the warden's right hand, and then he was the warden. He was 51. He had a farm outside Plattsburgh with a good barn. He wore round steel glasses and kept peppermint oil on a handkerchief in his breast pocket. You could smell him before you saw him, sweet and sharp and cold, like a candy left in the snow. He had a ring of brass keys he never used because men opened doors for him. The keys were for the sound. He had been raised to believe that a prison was a mirror. Whatever a man was outside, the prison showed it plain. He said that to visiting officials. He said it to reporters twice, and he said it the way other men say grace. And he had one rule he cared about more than the rest. No man inside his walls was allowed to be somebody. He was not a screamer. That is the part people get wrong. He was patient in his own way. He kept a ledger, green cloth cover, corners worn soft. He wrote in it every night. Names on the left, notes on the right. He wrote down who got mail. He wrote down who visited. He wrote down which men other men listened to. That last column was the only one that interested him. Bumpy Johnson's name sat in that column for 2 years. Underlined once, then twice, then circled. The circle was the decision. You should know what the letter said, because the letter is the whole story. Cornelius Nance had a wife named Ruthie and a daughter he had never held. The daughter was born 9 weeks after he went in. Ruthie could write barely in a slow, careful hand. She wrote that the baby had a birthmark on her shoulder shaped like a thumbprint. She wrote that she kissed it every night and told the child it was her father's hand. Pigeon asked Bumpy to write back. He did not know what to say. He said so. Tell her something, Pigeon said. Something good, you know words. Bumpy Johnson put the pen down. They are not my words, he said. They are yours. Talk. So Pigeon talked and Bumpy wrote. He wrote that the man was ashamed but not sorry he loved them. He wrote that the thumbprint was a promise and not a mark. He wrote that a man in a cold place can still be warm on paper. 6 pages, it took 2 nights. The pen he used was a black Waterman with a hairline crack in the cap. He had bought it in 1934 on 7th Avenue with numbers money. It was heavier than it looked. Cool in the hand even in summer. The nib had a small burr that caught the paper and made a dry scratching sound. Men said you could hear Bumpy Johnson thinking by the sound of that nib. The letter never made it to Buffalo. It went into a mail bag, it came out of a mail bag, and it went across a green cloth ledger and onto a desk that smelled of peppermint. And on the morning of January 11th, 1943, it went into a mess hall. Snow that day, wet heavy snow that stuck to the wire. The hall smelled of boiled cabbage and wet wool. 200 men at long tables, aluminum trays, steam on the high windows. There was a rule about talking. The rule was mostly ignored. At 6 minutes past 8, the room went quiet on its own. Pryor had come in through the north door. He walked the center aisle with his keys ringing. He stepped up onto a bench at the front so every man could see him. He was holding 6 pages of lined paper. "Gentlemen," he said, "I have found a poet." Nobody moved. "We have a man of letters among us." He let that sit. He was good at letting things sit. Then he began to read. He read Ruthie's name out loud. He read the baby's name. He read the line about the thumbprint on the shoulder. He read it in a high, sweet voice that was not his own. Somebody at the back made a sound. It was not quite a laugh. Pryor stopped and looked up and smiled and waited. That was the cruelest part. He waited for them. He waited until the room understood what it was supposed to do, and 200 men laughed. Some laughed because they were afraid. Some laughed because they were young. Some laughed because a laugh is a place to hide. Cornelius Nance sat in the middle of that sound with his tray in front of him. He put both hands flat on the table and looked at the wall. Bumpy Johnson sat 11 feet away. He did not stand. He did not speak. He watched Pigeon's hands go flat on the table. He would remember those hands for the rest of his life. Pryor finished the last page. He folded the letter into quarters. He was careful about the corners. "Johnson," he said, "stand up." Bumpy Johnson stood. "Say your name." "Ellsworth Johnson." "Not that name, the other one." 200 men stopped breathing at once. Bumpy said nothing. Pryor came down off the bench. His shoes were wet at the toes. He walked the 11 feet and he stopped close. Peppermint, wool, the cold coming off his coat. They tell me Harlem calls you a king, Pryor said. People say things. Say your number. Time slowed. The steam hung against the high windows. A spoon touched a tray somewhere and stopped. Snow slid off the roof and hit the ground outside like a body. A guard by the door shifted his weight and the floor answered. 200 men leaned forward the width of a breath, and Bumpy Johnson said his number. He said it clearly. He said it without shame in his voice. Then Pryor did the thing that made it permanent. He reached into Bumpy's shirt pocket and took the pen. He held it up so the room could see it. He turned it once in the light like a jeweler. Confiscated, he said. Contraband. He put it in his own breast pocket next to the handkerchief. Then he dropped the folded letter into a mop bucket by the wall. Gray water, cigarette ends floating in it. Pick it up, he said. Bumpy Johnson looked at the bucket. He looked at Pigeon. He knelt down on the wet concrete and put his hand in the water. It was cold enough to sting. The paper came apart in his fingers. He got most of it out. He held the pulp in his palm. He stood up slowly and he did not shake the water off. He let it run down his wrist and into his sleeve. 11 days in isolation, Pryor said, for the pen. Then he walked out with his keys ringing behind him. Nobody ate after that. 200 trays went back full. There is a thing that happens to a man in that moment. Most men choose one of two roads. They go blank and they go small, or they go hot and they go stupid. Bumpy Johnson did neither. Down in the isolation cell there was a light bulb behind a cage. There was a bucket and a shelf and a blanket that smelled of somebody else. He sat with his back to the wall and his knees up. He counted 11 days by the sound of the food slot, and on the second day he started building something in his head. Not a plan, not yet, a shape. He thought about the burr on the nib and the dry scratch of it. And the sound took him somewhere else entirely. Charleston, South Carolina, 1919. He was 13 years old and his name was only Ellsworth then. The house on Cannon Street had a porch that sagged on the left side. In the summer, the whole city smelled like pluff mud and hot tar. His mother, Margaret, kept a bottle of ink on the kitchen table. She wrote letters for the neighborhood on Sunday afternoons. Women came with news and left with envelopes. She charged nothing either. He learned that from her before he learned anything else. That was the year his brother Willie had to leave. A white man died in a fight and Willie's name got spoken in the wrong rooms. There was no trial coming. Everybody knew what was coming instead. They put Willie on a northbound train in the dark with $11. Ellsworth stood on the platform and watched the taillights go. His father did not say a word the whole walk home. That was the thing the boy could not forgive, not the men who ran his brother out. He expected them. His father's silence was what burned. He asked about it that night in the kitchen. Why did you not say anything to them? His father was a barber. His hands smelled like witch hazel. Because saying it would cost your brother his life, he said, so we do nothing. No, we do it slow. The boy did not understand, not for years. His mother lit the lamp and took out the ink. She wrote to Willie every Sunday for the rest of her life. Ellsworth watched the nib scratch across the paper. He asked her once why she wrote so carefully when Willie read so fast. Because paper outlives people, she said. Say it right the first time. He remembered the shape of her hand around the pen. He remembered that her letters reached 600 miles when her voice could not reach the corner. That was the private promise he made at 13. Not a promise about revenge. He was not built that way yet. A promise about distance. He decided that whatever he could not reach with his hands, he would reach some other way. In the isolation cell at Dannemora 24 years later, he heard the nib again. And he understood exactly what he was going to do. He was going to write, not one letter, not 100. He was going to write until the man who took his pen had nowhere left to stand. Here is what most people miss about a prison. It leaks. Men come in, men go out, men talk on the way. Every parole is a courier. Every discharge is an envelope with legs. Warden Pryor understood the walls. He never once thought about the doors. Bumpy Johnson came out of isolation on the 22nd of January. He had lost weight and gained something else. The first thing he did was find Cornelius Nance in the yard. Pigeon would not look at him. "I am not talking about it," Pigeon said. "Good. They laughed at Ruthie, at my child." "They laughed at him," Bumpy said. "They just used your mouth to do it." Pigeon's jaw worked. The wind came off the mountain and cut through them both. "You gonna kill him?" "No." "Why not?" Bumpy Johnson watched a crow walk across the frozen yard. "Because he would like that," he said. "He would be a hero in the ground." He turned and looked at Pigeon then. "I want him alive when it happens." "When what happens?" "When he has to explain himself." Pigeon laughed. It was an ugly sound with nothing behind it. "To who? He is the law up here." "He is a state employee," Bumpy said. "The state is a bigger animal than he is." He said one more thing before the whistle went. "Learn to read." "What?" "Learn to read, Cornelius. I will teach you." "Why?" "Because one day somebody is going to read something out loud about you again." He put a hand on the man's shoulder. "And I want it to be you." The teaching started that spring. It was not a school, nothing so official. It was 2 men on a bench with a newspaper and a pencil stub. Then 3 men. Then 6. Then a rotating crowd who came and went and pretended they were only passing by. Bumpy Johnson never called it a class. He called it killing time. The guards wrote it down as recreation. Pryor wrote it down in the green ledger as an irritation. But he could not find a rule it broke. And that was the second thing he never understood. The letter trade did not stop. It went underground and it changed shape. Now the letters went out through visitors and discharged men. Now Bumpy dictated instead of writing because the pen was gone. He was careful. He never sent a word about Pryor through the mail. He knew who read the mail. Instead, he built a habit. Every man who walked out of Dannemora between 1943 and 1948 got the same handshake. The same 11 words. "When you get to Harlem, ask for the barber shop on 129th. Some men forgot. Most men forgot. But not all of them. Meanwhile, Pryor had a good life and a bad habit. The good life was the farm, 20 acres and a barn painted white every second summer. The bad habit was that he had come to see the prison as a business he owned. It started small. That is how it always starts. A truck of state coal turned left instead of right and warmed his own house. Prison carpenters built a fence on his property on a Tuesday and got counted as present. The kitchen ordered beef for 800 and served beef for 600. The difference had to go somewhere. The difference went into a green cloth ledger in a private code on the right-hand page. And then it went further. A parole board is made of men. Men can be advised. The warden's recommendation letter was worth more than a lawyer. Word got around certain families in certain neighborhoods. A recommendation could be discussed. Discussion had a price. $400 in 1944. $700 by 1947. Cash. Never in his hand. Always in the hand of a man named Dennis Speck who managed the farm. Nobody complained. Who would they complain to? An inmate's word is worth nothing. Pryor was right about that. He was right about that for 11 years. Bumpy Johnson walked out of prison in 1948. It was a gray morning with fog sitting low on the road. He wore a suit that no longer fit him in the shoulders. He carried a paper sack with a Bible, a toothbrush, and 11 letters he had never sent. At the gate he stopped and turned around. He looked up at the wall for a long moment. The guard asked him what he was looking at. "The address," Bumpy said. Then he got on the bus. Harlem in 1948 had a sound he had been carrying in his ears for years. He heard it before he saw it. The bus came down and the city thickened. And then Lenox Avenue opened up in front of him. Streetlights buzzing on at dusk, Cadillacs idling on 142nd, the click of pool balls through an open door, somebody upstairs practicing the same 8 bars of a song over and over, fried fish and hot grease and the sweet smell of pomade from a barber's chair. Number slips going hand to hand on 135th like a language. Men saw him and stood up straighter. Women said his name into their hands. By the second night, the whole neighborhood knew Bumpy Johnson was home. There was a party for him above a restaurant on 7th. There was a woman there named Mamie Hatcher who did not act impressed. That mattered to him more than the party did. But before any of that, there was a room. He rented it that first week, 2 flights above a barber shop on 129th Street. Small, cold in the corners, one window looking at a brick wall. He paid a year in advance in cash. The people around him did not understand it. He had money coming. He had rooms he could have had for free. "What is up there?" Sweet Willie asked him. "Nothing yet," he said. "Let me tell you about the 3 people who made it work. Junius Bell was the first. Everybody called him Junie Bell. He was 62 and he had run numbers since Marcus Garvey was still in the country. He wore wool gloves with the fingertips cut off, summer and winter both. He kept a bus schedule folded in his hatband and he knew it by heart. His job was the bus depot. Every man coming down from the North Country came through the same gates. Junie Bell met them with $1, a sandwich, and a question. "You know Bumpy Johnson?" Half of them lied and said yes. The other half went quiet and said yes for real. The second was Wilbert Sweet Willie Rand, 30 years old, gold tooth on the left side, bay rum you could smell across a room. He was fast with his hands and faster with his mouth. He wanted the warden dead more than Bumpy did. "Give me 2 men and a car," he said. "He goes to church on Sunday like everybody else." "No, Bumpy, he put you on your knees." "He put me on my knees for 11 seconds. Bumpy Johnson poured coffee and did not look up. "I am taking 11 years. Sweet Willie did not understand that for a long time. He said so loudly more than once. His volume was the only argument he had. The third was Etta Cade. She was 44 and she had taught 4th grade in Newark for 9 years. She lost the job over a marriage that ended badly and a landlord who talked. She typed 90 words a minute and she drank tea out of a jelly jar. She kept 1 hairpin in her mouth while she worked, which frightened people who did not know her. She was also a licensed notary public, which turned out to be the most important fact in this entire story. Her office was the cold room above the barber shop. She had a desk, a typewriter, a lamp, and eventually 11 cardboard boxes. "You are asking men to sign their names to crimes," she said the first week. "I am asking them to sign their names to what they saw. Same thing to a prosecutor." Bumpy Johnson considered that. "Then we take the ones who have nothing left to lose," he said. "That is most of them." "I know." He gave her rules and the rules never changed. No man was paid, not $1, ever. Every statement had to include 1 detail that could be checked by somebody else. A date, a truck, a name, a dollar amount, a place. Every statement had to be signed in front of her and stamped. And nothing left that room. "Why not?" she asked. "Because paper only works once," he said. "You have to be holding it when the right door opens." The first year brought 9 men, 9 statements, 9 stamps, 2 of them useless. One man swore the warden had beaten a prisoner to death in 1941. Etta typed it and then set it aside. He is lying, she said. How do you know? He is enjoying it. They kept it out. That decision saved everything later. The second year brought 26. By 1950, the boxes held 104 statements. Coal deliveries, payroll, the White Barn, Dennis Speck and his handshake. 11 separate men described the same conversation about a parole recommendation. 11. The number kept turning up like a coin in a pocket, and every man who signed asked the same question at the end. What happens now? Nothing, Bumpy told them. Go live your life. That is it? That is it, until it is not. Some of them were disappointed. They wanted thunder. Reader, so did Harlem. There were men on those blocks who would have crossed the state line that night for him. He never let one of them go. Then came the setback that nearly ended it. His name was Roy Pettiford, and he was the best witness they had. He had worked 11 months in the warden's own farmhouse on a work detail. He had carried the envelopes. He had seen the money counted on a kitchen table. He signed in March of 1950. Etta stamped it. In August, he came back to the room and asked for the paper back. He had a job now. Foreman at a lumber yard in New Jersey, a good job, a surprising job for a man 8 months out of prison. Who gave you the job? Bumpy asked. A man. Which man? Roy Pettiford looked at the floor. He said his name was Speck. The room was very quiet. The barber's clippers hummed downstairs. Etta stopped typing. The hairpin came out of her mouth. Bumpy Johnson sat back in his chair. They know, Etta said. They know something. They know enough to buy him. Then they know less than they think. He turned to Pettiford and his voice did not change at all. Take the job. You are not going to stop me. No, feed your family. He stood and he shook the man's hand. But I keep the paper. You said I could take it back. I said no man is paid, Bumpy said. You took payment, different rule now. Pettiford left angry. He never came back. Etta waited until his steps were gone down the stairs. They will come for these boxes. Yes, then we should move them. No, Bumpy said. We should copy them. That night, 3 men typed until 4 in the morning. 2 copies of everything. One stayed, one went into a coal cellar on 144th Street. The third set went somewhere only Bumpy Johnson knew. He never told a soul where, not even Mamie, especially not Mamie. The Amsterdam News turned him down in the fall of 1950. He went in person, which he almost never did. He sat across from an editor with ink on his cuff and a cigarette burning down. He laid out 11 pages, just 11 out of 104. The editor read for 20 minutes without speaking. Then he took his glasses off and rubbed his eyes. This is real, he said. Yes, I cannot print it. Tell me why. Because every name on it is a convict. So is every witness to a prison. That is true, and it will not matter. The editor tapped the pages with 2 fingers. If I print this, they sue us and they win, and then we are gone. And a white newspaper? Worse. They will not even open the envelope. Bumpy Johnson gathered the pages and squared the edges on the desk. Then what does open? He said. The editor looked at him for a long moment. A subpoena, he said. Say more. Paper does not work from the outside. Paper works from the inside. Meaning, you do not need a newspaper, you need a hearing. And how does a hearing start? Somebody in Albany wants a scalp, the editor said. You wait for the season. Bumpy Johnson put on his hat. Then I will wait for the season, he said. He waited 3 more years. Now the story turns. Because in the spring of 1951, Harlan Vance Pryor got promoted. Not sideways, not out, up. They made him a deputy commissioner in the state corrections office. He moved to a brick house outside Albany with a hedge in front. He got an office with a window and a girl who answered his phone. His new job was policy. His new job was oversight. His new job was writing the standards that other wardens followed. And parole. He sat on the board that heard the appeals. Not one prison anymore. All of them. 9,000 men now lived inside the reach of his pen. Junie Bell brought the news up the barbershop stairs in his cut gloves. He read it out of the newspaper twice because he thought he had it wrong. Etta Cade set down her jelly jar of tea. Sweet Willie put his fist through the plaster by the window. The hole stayed there for 2 years. Nobody fixed it. Bumpy Johnson said nothing for a full minute. He walked to the window and looked at the brick wall across the air shaft. "Say something," Willie said. "Higher is better. Higher is better. He is untouchable now. He is visible now." He turned around. "A warden is a rumor, a commissioner is a headline." "That is a nice sentence, Bumpy. It does not do nothing." "It does one thing," Bumpy said. "It makes him worth investigating." But there was a second piece of news that day, and it cut deeper. A man named Alton Frisk had just come down from Dannemora on the morning bus. Junie Bell brought him straight to the room. He was 19 and thin, and he had worked as a trustee in the administration hall. He had cleaned Pryor's old office twice a week for a year. Etta typed his statement. It was ordinary. Coal, payroll, the usual. Then at the end, the boy mentioned something as an afterthought. "There was a case on the desk," he said. "Little glass box." Bumpy Johnson looked up. What was in it? A pen, black one, crack in the cap. The room went very still. "Was there a card?" "Yeah, typed card underneath." "What did it say?" The boy shifted. He was embarrassed for reasons he did not understand. "I could not read it too good, but the older fella told me." "Tell me what he said." Said it read, "Taken from the King of Harlem, 1943. Nobody spoke. Etta looked at Bumpy. She was the only one who dared. His face had not changed. His hands were still. But he stood up and walked out of the room without his coat. He was gone 11 minutes. When he came back, he sat down and said one sentence. He took it with him to Albany. "How do you know?" Etta asked. "Because a man does not leave a trophy behind." He tapped the desk once with 2 fingers. "He is going to hand it to me himself," he said. "One day." Now the emotional part, because there always is one. He married Mamie Hatcher in 1948. She was a woman from Virginia with a laugh like a screen door and no fear of him at all. She knew what he did. She did not pretend otherwise. But she did not know about the room above the barber shop until 1951. She found out the way wives find out. She followed the smell of carbon paper on his coat. They had it out in the kitchen on a Sunday evening. The radiator was clanking. She had the window cracked an inch even in the cold. She had made coffee and neither of them was drinking it. 3 years, she said. 3 years of Tuesdays. Yes. For a man in Albany who does not know your name anymore. He knows my name. Bumpy. She said it the way she said it when she was about to be right. You have a business, you have a wife, you have your health, which is a miracle. I know it. So tell me what this is. He turned the coffee cup a quarter turn on the saucer. It is not what you think, he said. Then say what it is. He did not answer. She sat down across from him and reached over and put her hand flat on the table. Flat, palm down, fingers spread. She did not know why she did it. She just did. He looked at her hand and something in his face came apart for a second. Then it closed again. Do not do that, he said quietly. Do what? Nothing. Nothing. She waited. She was good at waiting too. You are not fighting him, she said finally. No? No, you are still standing in that room. The radiator knocked twice and went silent. Everybody in this city thinks you came home in 48, she said. And you did not. Part of you is still up there in the cold with 200 men laughing. He did not tell her she was wrong. That was the whole answer, and they both heard it. She got up and took the cups to the sink. I am not asking you to stop, she said with her back to him. What are you asking? I am asking you to know what it costs. It does not cost anything. I do not hurt anybody. It is paper. She turned around and dried her hands. It costs you every Tuesday for 11 years, she said. That is a whole life, Bumpy. Somebody is living it, and it is not me. She went to bed. He sat in the kitchen until 2 in the morning. He did not go to the room the next Tuesday. He went the Tuesday after that. Then came 1952, and the ground opened under him. Federal agents took him on a narcotics conspiracy indictment. Big case, big names, newspapers. He fought it for 2 years through motions and delays. Everybody in Harlem knew how it was going to end. He knew how it was going to end, and that changed everything about the timing. He sat down with Etta Cade in the winter of 1953. The boxes had grown. 211 signed statements. 211. He noticed the number the day it landed. 200 men had laughed in that mess hall. Now there were 211 names on paper. He set the last folder down and looked at the stack for a while. How long do I have? Etta asked. Until they sentence me. And then they take me somewhere far. He said it plainly. No self-pity, it was a logistics problem. So we send it now, she said. No, Bumpy, not yet. There is no door yet. You may not be here when the door opens. He smiled at that. It was a small, tired smile. Then you will be, he said. The door opened in March of 1954. A state commission started looking into prison contracts. It began as these things always begin, over something stupid. A shipment of state-purchased lumber turned up at a private construction site. A local paper in the Mohawk Valley printed 400 words about it. An assistant counsel in Albany named Douglas Fenner read those 400 words. He was 34 and ambitious and bored out of his mind. He pulled the purchasing records for 11 correctional facilities. He found irregularities in 4 of them. The commission scheduled hearings for the autumn. And in the Amsterdam News on page 11 a 2-inch item ran. State panel to review prison purchasing. Testimony expected. Junie Bell brought it up the stairs and put it on the desk. Bumpy Johnson read it standing up with his hat still on. Then he sat down and took off his hat and read it again. That is it, he said. That is a little bitty thing, Junie said. 2 inches. 2 inches is a door. He gave the instructions that afternoon, and they were very precise. Not the whole file, never the whole file at once. Etta would send 41 statements. Only the ones with a checkable second source. Only the money ones. No accusations, no cover letter, no opinions. Nothing that sounded like a grudge. They must think they found it, he said, not that they were handed it. And your name? Etta asked. Nowhere, not once. She looked up sharply. You want no credit at all? Credit ruins it, Bumpy Johnson said. If my name is on it, it becomes a gangster's revenge. Then he survives it. He pushed the folder across. If my name is nowhere, it becomes the truth. The package left New York on the 14th of April. It was mailed from a post office in the Bronx by a man who did not know what he was carrying. Douglas Fenner opened it on a Friday afternoon. He read for 6 hours. He sent his secretary home. He came back on Saturday and read it again with a legal pad. 41 statements, notarized, consistent, cross-referenced. dates that matched purchase orders he already had in a drawer. 11 separate men describing the same parole conversation with the same farm manager. Fenner was not a good man or a bad man. He was an ambitious man with a file. That was all Bumpy Johnson had ever needed him to be. On the 29th of April, Fenner subpoenaed Dennis Speck. Speck lasted 9 minutes before his lawyer stopped the questioning. He came back 3 weeks later with immunity and a written statement. The white barn, the kitchen table, the envelopes, and a name in the top right corner of every page. Harlan Vance Pryor. The hearings began in September in a room in Albany with tall windows, wooden benches, a long table, a stenographer with a bad cough. The room smelled of floor wax and cigarette smoke and radiator dust. Reporters came for the first 2 days, and then most of them stopped coming. Prison purchasing is not exciting. That was the beauty of it. Bumpy Johnson was not there. He could not be. He was in a federal courtroom 250 miles south. But Etta Cade was there. She took the train up and sat in the 4th row. She wore a gray coat and she took notes in a school notebook. Nobody looked at her twice, which was exactly the point. Pryor testified on the 6th day, and here is the part that must be said honestly. He was magnificent. He walked in with his shoulders back and his glasses polished. 59 years old and still built like a fence post. He wore a dark blue suit and a small state pin on the lapel. The peppermint came with him. Etta smelled it from the 4th row. She wrote one line in her notebook and underlined it. He does not think he did anything wrong. He answered every question in a warm, patient voice. He called the chairman sir. He called the stenographer ma'am. He explained the coal as a clerical error and produced a receipt for reimbursement, dated 4 months earlier, which nobody caught that day. He explained the fence as volunteer labor by grateful men. He explained Dennis Speck as an employee who had disappointed him personally. He said the word disappointed and let his voice drop. 2 commissioners nodded. One of them wrote nothing at all. Then he turned it around the way strong men do. Gentlemen, he said, I am going to say a hard thing. He let the room settle. You are reading the words of convicted criminals. Men who have every reason on earth to lie about me. I took privileges from them. I broke up their little kingdoms. He looked at the row of reporters. There was a man in my institution who ran a business out of the mess hall. He had men working for him inside my walls. I ended it, publicly, in front of the population. He smiled. It was a good smile. It was almost kind. He is a famous man now in certain neighborhoods. I imagine he still has opinions about me. Etta Cade wrote 3 words in her notebook. He named him, because that was the mistake. Bumpy Johnson had kept his name off every page for 11 years, and Harlan Pryor put it into the record himself. He could not help it. The trophy was in his desk drawer. A man who keeps a trophy cannot resist showing it. The chairman leaned into the microphone. Mr. Pryor, are you saying the statements come from one source? I am saying they come from one grudge. That is a serious allegation. So is theft, sir, and I have not stolen anything. The room believed him. You could feel it. Fenner sat with his hand over his mouth. Etta wrote one more line before she got up to catch her train. We are losing, she called from Grand Central at 11 that night. Bumpy took the call at a candy store on Lenox with the phone cord stretched to the sidewalk. The streetlights were buzzing. A trumpet was playing badly somewhere above him. He listened for 4 minutes and did not interrupt. He is going to walk, Etta said. Yes, they liked him. The chairman liked him. I know. Bumpy. We gave them paper and he gave them a person. There was a long silence on the line. She thought the connection had dropped. Say that again, he said. I said he gave them a person. He looked down Lenox Avenue at the lights going all the way to the park. Then we give them one too, he said. He hung up and walked 11 blocks to a rooming house on 133rd Street. He knocked on a door on the 3rd floor at midnight. Cornelius Nance opened it in his undershirt. He was 35 now. He had a job at a laundry on Amsterdam Avenue. He had been out for 6 years. He had a room with a window and a shelf of books. He had a wife in Buffalo who had waited and a daughter he had finally held. He also had something else, which he had earned in a prison yard with a pencil stub. He could read anything you put in front of him. The two men sat on the edge of the bed because there was only one chair. "I need something from you," Bumpy said. "Name it." "You do not know what it is yet." "I know who is asking," Bumpy told him. It took 11 minutes. Pigeon listened with his hands on his knees. When it was done, he got up and went to the window. "Everybody up there heard that letter," he said. "Yes." "My wife's name, my baby's name." "Yes. And you want me to say it out loud again, in front of white men with a stenographer?" "I do." "Why?" Bumpy Johnson stood up. "Because they are counting on you being too ashamed." Pigeon's shoulders came up around his ears. "They have been counting on that for 11 years, Bumpy said. "That is the whole system right there. That is the entire thing." The radiator hissed. Somebody laughed in the hall. "If I do it, does he go to prison?" "I do not know." "Then what does it get me?" "It gets you your voice back," Bumpy said. "That is all I can promise." He put on his hat. "And Cornelius, you read it yourself, not me, not a lawyer." "Why does that matter?" "Because he read it for you once." Pigeon stood at the window a long time. "When?" "Thursday. I got work Thursday." "I know." Pigeon laughed. It was a real laugh this time, small and surprised. "All right," he said. "Thursday, the 21st of October, 1954. Room 11, 3rd floor in the State Office Building in Albany." Rain against the tall windows, steam heat too high, the smell of wet coats. Douglas Fenner had one witness left on his list and no confidence at all. He had told the chairman it would take 15 minutes. Etta Cade sat in the 4th row in the gray coat. Harlan Pryor sat at the front with his lawyer because he had asked to be present. He had asked as a courtesy. He liked being in rooms. The peppermint handkerchief was in his breast pocket. And in his briefcase, because he never traveled without it, was a small glass case. The door opened at 10 minutes past 2. Cornelius Nance came in wearing a borrowed brown suit. He had shined his shoes twice that morning. He was carrying nothing. He walked up the center aisle with his hat in his hand. Time slowed. The rain went soft against the glass. The stenographer's fingers hovered above the keys. Fenner turned a page and stopped turning it. Pryor looked up mildly, the way a man looks at a waiter, and then his face changed, just once, just for a moment. Nobody in the room caught it except a woman in a gray coat in the 4th row. She wrote 2 words in her notebook. He remembers. Nance sat. He gave his name. He spelled it. Fenner asked him where he had been incarcerated and when. Then Fenner did something no lawyer likes to do. He handed the witness a document and asked no question at all. "Mr. Nance, do you recognize this?" 6 pages of lined paper, water-stained along the bottom edge. The ink had run in 2 places. Somebody had dried it flat under a weight long ago. Somebody had carried it out of a prison in a paper sack in 1948. Somebody had kept it in a coal cellar for 6 years and never once mentioned it. Cornelius Nance held the pages in both hands. "Yes, sir," he said. "This is my letter." "Did you write it?" "No, sir, I could not write then." "Who wrote it?" "A man wrote down what I said." "Do you know what happened to this letter?" "Yes, sir." "Please tell the commission." And he did. He told them about the snow that stuck to the wire. He told them about the boiled cabbage smell and the steam on the windows. He told them about 200 men and their trays. He told them about a man on a bench with keys on his belt. He told them about the high, sweet voice that was not his own. He told them about the laughing, and he did not soften it. He told them about the mop bucket and the gray water. He said one sentence that stopped the room. My daughter was 11 weeks old, and he read her name out for a joke. The chairman took off his glasses. Fenner let the silence run. He was learning. "Mr. Nance," he said, "would you read the letter into the record?" Pryor's lawyer objected. He said it was not relevant to purchasing. The chairman looked at the ceiling for 4 seconds. "Overruled," he said. "The witness may read." Cornelius Nance put the pages flat on the table. He looked at them for a moment. Then he looked up at the room. "I want to say something first," he said. "Go ahead. When he read this, I could not read it myself. I understand. I can now." Then he read. He read slowly, the way a man reads who taught himself late. He read about being ashamed and not sorry. He read the line about the thumbprint being a promise and not a mark. He read the line about a man in a cold place staying warm on paper. His voice cracked once on the 4th page, and he waited and went on. It took 11 minutes. When he finished, nobody in room 11 moved. The rain filled the whole building. Then the stenographer, a woman with a bad cough who had typed for 9 years without expression, took off her glasses and wiped them on her sleeve. That was the moment the hearing turned. Not the coal, not the lumber, not the 41 statements. A man reading his own words in his own mouth. Fenner asked one more question, just one. "Mr. Nance, why did you come here today?" Cornelius Nance folded the 6 pages and put them in his inside pocket. "Because somebody told me a long time ago to learn to read," he said. "And who was that?" Pryor's lawyer half rose out of his chair, and Cornelius Nance looked straight at Harlan Vance Pryor. "He knows who," he said. "The reporters came back the next morning. All of them. Because the story was no longer about purchasing. The story was about a state official who had climbed onto a bench and read a man's love letter to 200 prisoners for sport. That is a story a newspaper can print. That is a story a newspaper cannot resist. The Amsterdam News ran it on the front page on the 30th of October. The editor with the ink on his cuff wrote the headline himself. He never knew where the tip came from. He had his suspicions. He kept them to himself for the rest of his life. 2 of the big downtown dailies picked it up within a week. Once the humiliation was public, the money became interesting. That is how it always works. The scandal opens the door and the ledger walks through it. Fenner recalled Dennis Speck. Speck brought receipts this time. Fenner subpoenaed the farm accounts. Then the parole files. 11 recommendation letters were pulled and compared with 11 bank deposits. The dates matched, not roughly, exactly. On the 18th of November 1954, the commission issued its findings. Harlan Vance Pryor was removed from his position. His pension contributions were forfeited under state statute. He was referred to the county district attorney on charges related to the sale of official influence. He pleaded to a lesser count in the spring and served 14 months. 14 months is not 11 years. Bumpy Johnson never said it was. But here is the part that mattered more. He never held a state job again, not a clerkship, not a night desk. The white barn was sold to pay the lawyer. The brick house with the hedge went in the same year, and the name was finished. In Plattsburgh, in Albany, in every prison in the state, the name was finished. That is the concrete thing. Say it in one sentence. The man who took Bumpy Johnson's pen lost his office, his pension, his farm, and his name. Now the other side of the scale, because this is not a story where the hero gets to enjoy it. On the 23rd of July, 1954, 3 months before Cornelius Nance walked into room 11, a federal judge in Manhattan sentenced Bumpy Johnson to 15 years. Narcotics conspiracy. He had fought it and lost. He stood up in a courtroom in a good suit and heard the number 15, not 11. There is no poetry in a federal sentence. Mamie was in the second row. She did not cry until the elevator. They sent him west that autumn, across the country by train with the shades down, then a boat across cold gray water to a rock in a bay, Alcatraz. He was 48 years old. He learned about the hearing from a newspaper 11 days late. An officer left it folded on the table in the library. That was never explained, and Bumpy never asked. He read the article twice. Then he read it a third time slowly. There was a photograph of Cornelius Nance in a borrowed brown suit. He was looking straight at the camera, and he was not ashamed. Bumpy Johnson folded the paper and put it back exactly as he found it. A man across the table asked him what he was smiling about. "Nothing," he said. The package reached Mamie Johnson in December. Small brown box, no return address. Postmarked Albany. Inside was a glass case with the lid off and a black Waterman pen. Hairline crack in the cap. Small burr on the nib. There was no note. There has never been an explanation for who sent it. Some say a clerk cleaning out an office found it and asked a question. Some say Fenner did it himself and never spoke of it. Some say Pryor mailed it near the end for reasons only he understood. Harlem prefers that last version. Harlem would. Mamie carried it to the visiting room the first time she made the trip west. They would not let her hand it to him. Of course they would not. The rules were the rules. So she held it up against the glass with 2 fingers. She turned it once in the light the way a jeweler would. And Bumpy Johnson, who did not show things, closed his eyes. He opened them and put his own hand flat against the glass. Flat, palm down, fingers spread. She understood then what she had done at the kitchen table 3 years earlier. She had made the shape of Cornelius Nance's hands on a mess hall table. She had made it by accident. He had never told her that story. He never told her at all. She kept the pen in a drawer in the apartment for 9 years. She wrote her letters to him with it every Sunday, every single Sunday, the way a woman in Charleston once wrote North. He came home in 1963, Lenox Avenue at dusk, streetlights buzzing to life. Old men playing checkers outside Bloomstein's stood up when the car passed. He was 57 and tired, and the neighborhood had changed. The pen was on the kitchen table when he walked in. He picked it up and felt the weight of it. Heavier than it looked, cool in the hand, even in a warm room. He ran his thumb over the crack in the cap. Then he unscrewed it and wrote one line on the back of an envelope. Nobody knows what it said. Mamie never told anyone. She said only that he wrote it slowly. She said he wrote it the way his mother taught him. Say it right the first time, and here is what the story leaves us. 200 men laughed in a cold room in 1943. Not one of them wanted to. That is the thing about a laugh you are ordered to give. 11 years later, one man read 6 pages out loud in a warm room in Albany. Nobody laughed at all. Between those 2 rooms, there is no gunfire. There is no body in a river and no car with the engine running. There is a rented room above a barber shop and a woman with a hairpin in her mouth. There are 211 signatures. There is an old man in cut-off gloves at a bus gate with sandwiches. There is a hothead who never got his way and stayed loyal anyway. That is what patience actually looks like. It is not dramatic. It is Tuesdays. Bumpy Johnson understood something that his enemies never did. Humiliation is a weapon that only works in the moment it is used. After that, it belongs to the person who survived it. Pryor spent 11 years polishing a pen in a glass case. Bumpy Johnson spent 11 years teaching a man to read. Only one of those was an investment. And when the door finally opened, it was not opened by a gun. It was opened by a man in a borrowed brown suit who could finally say his own daughter's name out loud. His father in Charleston was right. You do not do nothing. You do it slow. There is a picture that stays with you if you have followed this far. Snow sticking to the wire at Dannemora, steam on the high windows, cabbage and wet wool, a man kneeling on cold concrete with his hand in gray water, 200 trays going back full. Now put the other picture beside it. Rain on tall windows in Albany, 6 water-stained pages flat on a table, a voice that cracks once and keeps going. 11 minutes of a room learning how to be quiet, same paper, same words, different mouth. That is the whole lesson, and it fits in one line. They can take your pen. They cannot take your handwriting. Bumpy Johnson died on a July night in 1968 at a table on East 116th Street. Coffee and grits in front of him. Somebody's radio playing through a wall. He was 62 years old. They found a pen in his coat pocket. Black. Hairline crack in the cap. Small burr on the nib that caught the paper. If you held it up to the light and turned it once, it did not look like much. It never did. That was always the point. Power is not the noise you make in front of 200 men. Power is the 11 years you are willing to wait in silence. And the quietest man in the room is usually the one still writing.